All right, you're looking at the PowerPoint and not my notes, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, so I think earlier I said this talk would be tomorrow, but obviously it's today, and here we are. So a quick review of the steps of meditative inquiry, which, sorry, we'll pass that by. And then what we will do is a practice. We will use HPB's quotes from her letters to the American Convention. And these excerpts will be her thoughts on the ethics of theosophy. The meditative inquiry will consist of questions for you to ponder and also action items for you to implement. The idea is to use the system to create the field from which we can interact with one another from a higher perspective, both in our studies and in our personal life. That should kind of be pounded in by now. Mahatma KH reminds us why we are given the teachings. He says, the truths and mysteries of occultism constitute a body of the highest spiritual importance, both profound and practical. Yet it is not as a mere addition to theory or speculation that they are being given to you, but for their practical bearing on the interests of mankind. So although the theosophical teachings present us physical or spiritual truths, it is important to approach them with a mindset that is beyond the mere gathering of concepts. Have the ability to provide an all-inclusive understanding of our existence, bringing into our worldview spiritual realities that lie beyond what our senses bring. That this practice creates a field, a ground, a container, or a place where we interact with freedom from the conditioning of thought. This gives us the opportunity to stimulate our intuition and allows for insights to be an active part of our daily state of mind. From this, we gain an exactness in understanding in each encounter we have, thus giving rise to more harmony in our interactions. As soon as we speak or listen with an agenda or personal motive, we limit our field of options, some of which may be beyond what the brain can see at that moment. If we can be curious and open to where an inquiry can lead us, the field before us opens up to infinite potentiality. All right, now just go through these again. Listen with the silent mind. Respond from the heart. Speak with purpose and awareness. And the fourth piece acts as, remember, the collective effort of these first three aspects, the transformation that propels us to tap into the substratum. The fourth one, tap into the substratum, is where the spiritual consciousness influences our daily life. We can't do that. There's nothing that we can do to get that directly. But if we are curious, if we respond from the heart, if we speak with purpose and awareness, it's like poof, then that comes. Okay. All right. So here we go. All right. As we begin the main part of our study together, a little background. When HPB formed her inner group of students to study practical occultism, for each meeting, she required them to formulate 3 questions and bring them to the meeting. So I invite you to do the same. Watch your mind, come up with questions, and ponder over the things that I say. So that's a lot. The quotes here are from a series of letters written by HPB to the American Convention in the last 4 years of her life, from 1888 to 1891. As we will see, the relevancy of these teachings in these letters is as powerful today as it was 135 years ago. Theosophy's most holy and most important mission is to unite firmly a body of people of all nations in brotherly love and bent on a pure altruistic work, not on a labor with selfish motives. This is the keynote of Theosophy and the cure for all ills. It is which the real founders of the Theosophical Society promote as the first object, universal brotherhood. So there are a few pieces, key pieces here that are the very basis and aim of the Theosophical practice: altruism, brotherhood, and unity. Brotherhood and unity can seem like a monumental task, rather an unreachable goal, especially when it is all too easy to see the separateness, differentiation, and disconnection around in everyday life. The effect of this high ideal may be more of a paralyzing overwhelm than a call to action. But HPB reiterates for us to bring these ideas into the practical realm. She says, the practical cure lies in one thing. It sounds very simple, but is eminently difficult, for that cure is altruism. Well, this is by no means easy. Here we have a doable act, an act of being selfless, or doing things with a selfless motive, which is the very essence of altruism, which is the opposite of egoism. It is a behavior which is not beneficial to the doer and can even be harmful or uncomfortable to the doer, but it is beneficial to the whole. So when we understand just this one piece, we realize that we can act selflessly, that we can be altruistic, and this action creates a place from which universal brotherhood is a natural manifestation. Universal brotherhood then is a recognition of the oneness in humanity, or unity. Unity is not always a visible, tangible, physical manifestation, but its recognition is the outcome of acting selflessly and without personal motives, an action we can do each day. So our inquiry is, ask yourself or ponder over, in what areas of your life do the most natural and innate motion towards altruism show up? Where is it easy for you to do selfless acts? At what times do you act without personal motives? And then conversely, where in daily life are you pushed and pulled by your triggers into a more instinctive behavior that tends to go against altruism or is based on more personal motives? Okay, so we have some time. So what I'm trying to do is leave space in between the questions for you to ponder over them. So the ethics of theosophy are even more necessary to mankind than the scientific aspects of the psychic facts of nature and man. These psychic laws and facts relate wholly to the material and evanescent part of the septenary man. But the ethics sink into and take hold of the real man, the reincarnating ego. We are outwardly creatures of but a day. Within, we are eternal. So teach, practice, and promote the system of life and thought, which alone can save the coming humanity. HPB gives us a clear action item here to teach, practice, and promote as best we can in whatever areas we find ourselves, a practical system of life based on the ethics of theosophy. So the inquiry, have you taken the time to discover what is the basis or the foundation of your standards of behavior? Where does your code of ethics come from? Is it conditioned by your environment or based on universal truths? So take a moment. Obviously, you will need more than just what the time we have here, but think about these questions and think about how you can come up with your own personal mission statement. So you're thinking about where your standards of behavior come from. Where does your code of ethics come from? So the homework, I guess it is, to create a personal mission statement to guide your attitude in a spiritual direction. Then bring this declaration into your relationships, your study, meditation, and acts of service. Okay. The Golden Stairs by HPB. Do you know that? A Clean Life.
Yep.
That's what I'm talking about. Something like that guides you in your actions. The tendency of modern civilization is a reaction toward animalism. That is a development of those qualities which conduce to the success in the life of man as an animal in the struggle for existence. Theosophy seeks to develop the human nature, in addition to the animal, and at the sacrifice of the superficial physicality which modern life and materialistic teachings have developed to a degree in which is abnormal for the human being at this stage of progress. In the beginning of the human journey, it was natural that the personality had a tendency for self-preserving action. And it's these well-worn habits for self-preservation that trigger and drive people's reactions. But today, for self-preservation, but today, for the most part, we are no longer being hunted. Our survival doesn't depend on defending our very self from imminent death. However, continuing with this instinctive mindset is creating separation or feelings of disconnect. When our thoughts and emotions are constantly in survival mode, it makes it difficult to feel the compassion that is naturally in our hearts. So let us take a moment and explore where in our lives do we strengthen this animal nature or kama manas? Are we aware and able to catch ourselves when the automatic movement of thoughts, emotions, or moods, and therefore actions, tend towards kama? So the essence of theosophy is the perfect harmonizing of the divine with the human in man, the adjustment of godlike qualities and aspirations and their sway over the terrestrial or animal passions within. We are a reflection of the cosmos. As human beings, we are in a unique position since we have within us the qualities of all the kingdoms of nature, from the elemental kingdom, which are the forces of nature, to the Dhyani Chohans, the angelic kingdom. No other kingdom has the potentiality of the whole universe within its very being. The conflict and disharmony we experience and produce hinders our access to these spiritual realities. However, as we begin to purify the personal vehicles of consciousness and then harmonize with the divine, knowledge of the occult realities can be assimilated by the personality from the higher planes. I'm going back to the quotes. The quote, so HPB continues, kindness, absent of every ill feeling or selfishness, charity, goodwill to all beings, and perfect justice to others, as to oneself, are theosophy's chief features. These features are part of the essence of our being. As we begin to recognize them, our work is aimed at building a pathway or a bridge, the antakarana, which extends from the animal nature to the divine nature. The building of the bridge puts us in touch with what Blavatsky calls the substratum from that diagram of meditation. It is the ground from which our actions, our thoughts, and our emotions can work in an innate, spontaneous, compelling movement that tends towards altruism. She leaves us here with an action item. He who teaches theosophy preaches the gospel of goodwill. And the converse of this is true also. He who preaches the gospel of goodwill teaches theosophy. We can all preach the gospel of goodwill with our thoughts, our words, and our actions. We can do this each and every day without ever uttering a word, a theosophical word. So our inquiry questions are then, what does your kindness, charity, and goodwill really look like in your life? In what areas do you express these qualities? Can you see how the actions of others, even though they seem different from yours, may really have the same spiritual motive? In what relationships or situations can you bring an infusion of acts of theosophy? Theosophists are of necessity the friends of all movements in the world for the improvement of the condition of humanity. We are the friends of all those who fight against cruelty to animals, against injustice to women, against corruption in society or in government, although we do not meddle in politics. We are the friends of those who exercise practical charity, who seek to lift a little of the tremendous weight of misery that is crushing down the poor. But our quality of, or our function as theosophists, we cannot engage in any one of these great works in particular. As individuals, we may do so, but as theosophists, we have a larger, more important, and much more difficult work to do. Our work as individuals is important, and what we do outwardly is always helpful. But we should remember that anything we do on the physical plane has limits and is temporary. Any actions we take, feelings we share, or thoughts we send out are still limited by space and time. There's only so much we can do, so much time we have to help. But when we begin to harmonize our vehicles and raise our consciousness, we go beyond the bounds of space and time. And we work from a place where there are no limitations and what we do is eternal. This is what is referred to as the beginning of an inner revolution. As we try, whether it be an apparent success or a seemingly failure, in that very process of working towards purification, we add to the quality of the whole, to universal brotherhood, to unity. And it is here that the effects are exponentially more powerful. So where we can, we should feed the homeless, care for the ill, stand up for the persecuted. Absolutely. Because we are just simply because we are a member of humankind. That is a given. But our work as theosophists is in spiritual service to humanity. It is the self-examining mind, when applied both in meditation and in everyday life, that leads to the transformation of the human nature. So the inquiry would be, take into account a realistic view of your situation in life. What is the most effective way for you to help humanity, both as an individual and as a theosophist? Oops. Wait. Okay. So I split this one into two sections. The function of theosophists is to open hearts and understandings to charity, justice, and generosity, attributes which belong specifically to the human kingdom and are natural to each of us when we have developed those qualities of a human being. Theosophy teaches the animal man to be a human man. And when people have learned to think and feel as truly human beings should feel and think, they will act humanely, and works of charity, justice, and generosity will be done spontaneously by all. In this part of the quote, HPB is distinguishing between the animal man as that instinctual nature influenced by karma that yields to a self-preserving survival mechanism, and the human man in whom manas, or the thinking principle, is influenced by buddhi, to act humanely for the betterment of humanity. And then she says that as we work on this inner transformation, our outer actions will change spontaneously. And from letter 2, she gives us an action item. Earnest members must strive to make theosophy a vital factor in their lives, to make it real, to wield its principles firmly into their lives. So the inquiry is, how can we bring theosophy off the pages of our books we read, out of the voices of the lectures we hear and the lodge meetings that we attend, and from off the meditation cushion into our daily life? So the 3 questions I would ask in this part are specific. So where is one area in your life that you could use an infusion of theosophy? How are you going to make that application? What is your action item? And then specifically, where can you begin, or when can you begin? Before we get to the last few slides and conclude, what we did today is a guided or facilitated form of meditative inquiry. This method can also be used without a facilitator. Here we would come together with an article, an excerpt from a book, or a group of quotes, and we would share in the interpretation of the teachings. So I just want to make sure that everyone understand that there are different ways to do this. I got this idea from Pablo. He would meet with a group of theosophists. They would read a quote and sit in absolute silence until someone came up with a question or an insight. Many times there was more silence than there was talking. All right. So let's see what we have next. Okay. I think we're okay on time. So As we try and work on these lines, even if we fail, we generate the karmic force for future success. We build up a critical mass. Our work, although seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, has the power to make changes we cannot begin to imagine from our current point of view. To illustrate this point, I would like to share this video. You've probably seen it. It's about 10 years old, but offers a powerful example of how our inner work can affect the world. Here.
That's right.
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. That the numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of songbirds and migratory birds started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves of the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed, more pools formed, more riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
Okay. You guys could hear that, right? Okay. It was just weird for me not to be able to hear it, but I love that video, and I could almost recite the words even in the accent there. But can you see, and this could be used for a whole array. Oh, the idea is this video can be used as a meditative inquiry. It's just one way to do it. So we can look at it in many different ways, but the one point I want to make today is that we have no idea the outcome of the actions that we do every day. And if we notice, the wolves did what wolves do. The wolves didn't try to organize the beavers. The wolves didn't start planting trees on the riverbanks. They just did what they do. So we just need to do the same thing. What is it that we need to do? Let's see if I can get it up here. All right. So then, after all, every wish, and this is from a month before HPB's death, she gives us what I called a rally cry. After all, every wish and thought I can utter are summed up in this one sentence, the never dormant wish of my heart. Be Theosophists, work for Theosophy. If any of you have learned aught from my teachings or have gained by my help a glimpse of the true light, I ask you in return to strengthen the cause. Theosophy first and Theosophy last. Merci.